Yeah, I'm ready.
Hope so. Yeah. Thanks. Your party gift. Yeah.
How's everything at your school? Yeah. Mine was worse than
So Yuri's here somewhere.
that was the worst.
Yeah. I'm assuming that's why they're waiting.
Yeah, there's a
Well, it appears that we have 5, which is a quorum up here, so I would like to call to order the 8th regular meeting of the Board of Directors of SAD 52, and if Richard could lead us in the pledge, that would be most appreciated.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Our first order of business this evening would be to act on the minutes of December 16th. Any errors or omissions noted on those? If not, we accept those under general consent. That brings us to communications. Kim.
Thank you. I'd like to report the following resignations. Angela McGregor, Tripp Middle School Special Ed Tech 3, effective December 3rd of this past December 3rd. Michael Poulin, Leavitt Area High School Special Education Ed Tech 3, effective also this past December 3rd. Jamie Gentora, Levitt Area High School Assistant Cross Country Coach, effective November 19th of this past fall. Lisa Crawford, Turner Elementary School Custodian, effective December 31st. Lori Mardosa, Green Central School Special Education Ed Tech 3, effective January 7th.
Thank you. Do we have any adjustments to the agenda?
There are no adjustments.
Thank you. That brings us to committee reports. Finance, Yuri.
We did not meet tonight.
Thank you. Plant Transportation Building. Jessica was out this evening, so we had a quick meeting where Mr. Flanagan updated us on several ongoing projects. We had an update on the Turner Primary School water issues, and it appears that we are moving towards a well in slightly warmer weather as we go, given indications from Goodwin Well and Water as far as that process and the challenges of doing a lot of digging and drilling at the current moment. We will stay updated on that if we need to move on to Plan B there. We also received an update from Mr. Flanagan from the folks at, and Mr. Shaw from the folks at Wright Pierce. Our point person there is Jan Wiegman, and there are continuing discussions. We're waiting to hear back from them on conversations with DEP and the state DHHS around variances for the, I'm going to oversimplify and call it the leach field. It's a lot more complex than that, but component of the ongoing wastewater treatment plant construction. So we anticipate hearing more about that soon. And last but not least, we had an update on a butter had approached the district about some tree removal on a spot that is not easily accessed from our side, and has a suggestion that comes in at minimal cost to the district and takes care of the risk that those trees do pose currently. So short and sweet for today, and we'll look forward to further updates on both the primary school well and the wastewater treatment plant. That brings us to curriculum policy. And Richard is indicating that the committee has not met, but is meeting, did I understand, Teresa, Tuesday the 11th? Thank you. Student representatives report, and we don't have a student this evening. We'll look forward to that next time. There is no administrator report. We'll move right to the superintendent's report. Kim.
Thank you. The Maine CDC and the DOE have recently changed the standard operating procedures, which inform schools what they must do in the event of a positive case and provide parameters for quarantining. There are two substantive changes. One relates to the isolation period for those who test positive for COVID-19, and the second relates to the quarantine period for those who are identified as a close contact. The two changes are, first, the isolation period for people who test positive for COVID-19 has been reduced from 10 days to 5 days as long as their symptoms are improving. The quarantine period for people identified as a close contact has been reduced from 10 days to 5 days. There are also several exceptions that waive the quarantine period as long as the close contact remains asymptomatic. The most notable exception applies to students and staff in schools where there is a mandated masking policy. Because MSAD 52 has a mandatory masking policy, students and staff who are identified as close contacts can continue to attend school and school activities as long as they are asymptomatic. All close contacts must wear a mask around others for 10 days. If the close contact is not fully vaccinated, he or she must quarantine from community activities for 5 days, but can continue to attend school and school activities. The Maine CDC encourages parents to get their child tested 5 days after exposure, and if your child develops symptoms, please get him tested, have him or her stay home, and call a healthcare provider for questions or concerns about those symptoms. If your child is identified as a close contact, you will be contacted by the school nurse through an email that gives you more information. And I mentioned earlier that there were several exemptions that waived the quarantine period for asymptomatic close contacts. The other exceptions include participating in school pool testing and being fully vaccinated. MSAD 52 will continue to offer pool testing because it helps to identify asymptomatic people who are positive for COVID-19, and because it also allows people who develop symptoms to get tested, and that will help us reduce spread. Also, if you are fully vaccinated, you have a waiver from the quarantine. And the Maine CDC and DOE define fully vaccinated as someone who is boosted, is a fully vaccinated 16 to 17-year-old student who may be eligible to receive a booster but hasn't yet done so, a person who is eligible for a booster but is fully vaccinated, and someone who has completed their second dose of Pfizer or Moderna vaccine within 6 months or J&J vaccine within 2 months. So we know the cases have been rising, and our goal is to keep students in school as much as possible. To do that, MSAD 52 is implementing the recommended health and safety measures, which include the masking, the distancing when feasible, sanitizing and washing hands, ongoing cleaning of buildings and transportation vehicles, and pooled testing. But we do need your help. Please do the health check every single morning, and if your child has symptoms, please keep him or her home and call your healthcare provider. So these recent changes in the standard operating procedures mean that because our schools have a mandatory masking policy, healthy students no longer need to quarantine at home, missing valuable instruction. This change also means that we have to be more vigilant than ever about staying home when we do have symptoms. The CDC has also changed the definition of a school outbreak status. It used to be if you had 3 unrelated cases, you were considered an outbreak. Now it is when 15% or more of combination of students and staff are out sick. So not people who are on vacation or other reasons like that, but if they're out sick. If that happens, if we reach that 15% threshold, then the CDC will investigate and we may face a school closure at that time for several days. That's in alignment with other infectious diseases, like the flu or other things that sometimes happen in schools. Superintendents met with Commissioner Megan, that's DOE Commissioner Megan, and the school nurses met with the DOE on Monday afternoon, and we have since discussed what we learned from all of those meetings. The commissioner told us to expect future changes as well. There would be more changes coming up, so to keep watching. I will report out at the January 20th board meeting about any future changes. I want to take a few minutes today to talk about the current reality that's happening in our schools. And that is that teachers and staff are struggling to teach the students in front of them 5 days a week, while also providing meaningful lessons for those students who are out in quarantine. The fact that it can be a bit of a revolving door with which students are in person and which are in quarantine on any given day makes this situation even more challenging. Then, of course, there is the challenge of providing effective feedback to those in quarantine and helping them catch back up when they come back to in-person instruction. We don't have enough substitutes, so people are regularly being pulled from other duties and prep times to cover for those people who are out. This is certainly the most challenging year most of us have ever experienced in our work. We are seeing behaviors we have not seen in the past, and I do believe that all of us are fatigued and otherwise impacted by the lingering pandemic. Administrators are constantly looking for ways to support staff, and our district is certainly not alone in facing these challenges, and superintendents are constantly talking about what more or different can be done to support our students, teachers, and staff. Judith Lashman, president of the Teachers Association, and I meet at least monthly to discuss how teachers and staff are doing and ideas that teachers and staff may have for further support. I actually spoke with Judith right before the break and when I was at the high school, and we have some ideas, including the possibility of some early release planning days to consider. I will be speaking with Judith further very soon and further with administrators who are all looking for ways to further support their staff. And on January 20th, I will present a proposal to the board that is likely to include some early release days for time to plan. On Monday of this week, I had the pleasure of coming here to the auditorium to watch a live session of Buzz Media. And Buzz Media has been happening for a while now. And Mike Hathaway, Isaiah Davis, Jamie Ventura, Will Parkin, I believe, Chip Groover, and Ms. Hickson, I think, were there on Monday. There was great energy among them. There was a lot of good humor, a really positive focus, and it was relaxed, and there was an entertaining flow to the whole session. And I really appreciate that, because seeing it stream live is different than being live in person. But they do a great job with that, and I appreciate it. Part of the session on Monday was the opportunity to present the Patience Norman Award. Each year, as we know, one exemplary teacher in MSAD 52 receives this prestigious award. The process is that teachers, students, parents, and/or community members nominate teachers for the award, and a board team comprised of a board member from each town. This year it was Mr. Gross, Mr. Kowalski, Mr. Gnip, and Chair Bullard. They were the team. The team reviews all the nominations, holds these up against the established award criteria, which includes a teacher who is innovative and creative, who supports high aspirations for students, who is a role model for peers, who has high expectations for everyone, and fosters a positive work climate. And then a recipient for this year is chosen. We have so many stellar teachers, so this is not an easy task, and it is one that is taken very seriously. I'd like to take a minute to read what two people who nominated this year's recipient said about the person they nominated. They said, "This teacher is a really positive person who knows students well and has captured the hearts of thousands with lighthearted shenanigans and impactful teaching style. It is common in this teacher's classroom to see lively debates, historical costumes, and a teacher who inspires students to love the content. Key to the Levitt Summer Institute, this teacher has provided multidisciplinary and expeditionary summer learning. At a time when the world was telling us to stay apart, this teacher brought everyone together safely using social media. This teacher helped launch snowman building contests and dress-up days from home, and even had teachers playing a Hollywood Squares-like game through Zoom. We were all stuck at home, but the Levitt community was together in spirit and in heart because of Buzz Media and that team. This teacher is knowledgeable, engaging, and impactful, making everyone feel valued. This person is an exceptional teacher." I love this one. "The kind of teacher they make movies about." The teacher who receives the Patience Norman Award each year also receives a prize of $5,000. So it is a wonderful, prestigious award and a lot of money, which is great. The winner of this year's Patience Norman Award is Mr. Isaiah Davis, social studies teacher at Levitt Area High School. Congratulations, Mr. Davis.
Thank you, and would add my congratulations as well. And as the Buzz Media team always has tremendous enthusiasm and definitely has found great ways to keep people connected over the last year and a half, and that's definitely a nice way to start a new year off. So much appreciated for the work that goes on there. That brings us to public comment, and as I have done at previous meetings, I'll refresh everybody on our public participation policy, and then we can get into it. The board will designate a portion of its agenda as an opportunity for public participation. During the time allotted for public participation, members of the public may speak on any subject directly related to the operations of the schools, except for personal matters or complaints concerning specific employees or students, which shall be addressed through established policies and procedures. Members of the public may address the board within the guidelines provided in this policy. The chair shall be responsible for maintaining proper order and compliance with these guidelines. The following guidelines shall apply to public participation at board meetings. Citizens and employees of the school unit are welcome to participate as provided in this policy. Others may be recognized to speak at the chair's discretion. Individual employees and/or employee groups will not be permitted to discuss matters for which complaint or grievance procedures are provided. The chair may limit the time allotted for comments on a particular topic, as well as the time each individual may speak. And at this point, we have looked at 5 minutes at the time limit for individual speakers. In the event of a sizable audience, the chair may require persons interested in speaking to sign up so they may be called on in a fair and efficient manner. During the time set aside for public participation, the chair will be responsible for recognizing all speakers who must identify themselves as they begin talking. Speakers are not permitted to to share gossip, make defamatory comments, or use abusive or vulgar language. All speakers are to address the chair and direct questions or comments to particular board members of the superintendent only with the approval of the chair. Requests for information or concerns that require further research may be referred to the superintendent to be addressed at a later time. Members of the board and superintendent may ask questions of any person who addresses the board, but are expected to refrain from arguing or debating issues. Questions must be addressed through the chair. No complaints or allegations will be allowed at board meetings concerning any person employed by the school system or against particular students. Personal matters or complaints concerning student or staff issues will not be considered in a public meeting, but will be referred through established policies and procedures. In order to make efficient use of meeting time, the board discourages duplication or repetition of comments to the board. The board requests that groups or organizations be represented by designated spokespersons. The chair has the authority to stop any presentation that violates these guidelines or the privacy rights of others. Persons who disrupt the meeting may be asked to leave, and the chair may request law enforcement assistance as necessary to restore order. So we have the podium and microphone set up, and if folks are interested in addressing the board, we'd ask that you avail yourselves of the wonders of modern technology.
Good evening. My name's Karen Beckel, and I did want to address the board tonight. Just on a subject, I just heard our superintendent talk about giving all the news, and she talked about how one of the challenges that the school is facing is that there's a lack of substitute teachers. I work as a substitute mainly in the primary school. I could work every single day should I desire to. And one of the reasons I don't desire to work every day is because the pay is very kind of abysmal. I've spoken with some people I know in surrounding districts. Their pay is slightly more than MSAD 52 offers. I've also spoken with, I have a daughter that substitute teaches out in another state, a rural state in the Midwest. She earns almost twice what I get here in the district as a substitute teacher. And in fact, they also offer a bonus if you work a certain number of days during the school year as a substitute, which I don't believe is offered here either. So I just wanted to address that and address that, the idea that I feel that in today's day with all the other increases in the cost of living, that paying $85 or $89, I don't even know what it is, I don't think it's more, I know it's not more than 89, maybe 87, that a substitute teacher gets in the district. It's pretty poor. I could make more working at McDonald's, but I sure don't want to work there. So that's all I wanted to just suggest. I talked with Ms. Gillis, and she had suggested that it would be a good idea to come and discuss it with the board, bring it up to the board for something for you to discuss. So.
Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome.
Thank you. If I can figure out how to use my microphone, that I will, as we move through the public comment component of this, we try to follow up when we can. At our last meeting, we did talk about changes that had just been made to the sub-pay rate, and that also indicating that that's an ongoing set of conversations, so thank you for that. All right, next.
Good evening, Josh Lappin from Green, Maine. I first kind of wanted to touch on the new policy changes that the superintendent brought up. One thing I can't wrap my mind around is that if you're fully vaccinated, you're allowed to come to school, not quarantined, yet you can still get and spread COVID with the vaccine, so that makes no sense to me. And now all of a sudden, if you have a mask on, we don't have to quarantine, so that's changed again, and now it went from 10 days to 5 days. Everything's just so ever-changing, yet Omicron's the deadliest thing in the world, so everyone's gonna die. But past that, I did send 2 videos to the superintendent. It was a doctor that was on CBS. He was the former FDA commissioner. His name was Scott Galib. And also Dr. Leanna Wen, who was on CNN also this past week. She was a public health professor at George Washington University. And I want to go ahead and play the audio for those videos, that way everyone can hear. Because I think it speaks a lot to what's going on and where we've been these past few long years.
I'm going to ask that you not play the video and limit the comments to your own comments. If you want to paraphrase those, that would be great.
Okay, so I'll paraphrase if that's the case. So Dr. Leanna Wen came out on the news and said that face masks do not work. They didn't work for Omicron, they didn't work for Delta, and they do not work for Alpha. That the virus is airborne, that the masks do not protect you, and they are nothing more than a face decoration. And also Dr. Scott Galib said the same thing, that they do not work. Yet we're still here going through this circus because no one has the courage to stand up and do what's right for these kids. Because everyone is fearful. It's sad. The mask is adding to the kids' anxiety. They can't see kids' facial expressions. I'm sure everyone here sees it in their kids. Their anxiety is going through the roof. They're twiddling, twitching. They want to be on their screens. They don't know what to do. It's pathetic. And I know, go through the list real quick. So, in Turner, the chair seat is up April 23rd. Richard's seat is up April in 2022. Joanne's is up May in 2024. Jessica's is up May of 2024. Those are all Turner. Green, Yuri's is up in March of 2022, and I am going to take that seat because we need an alpha male on that to stand up for these kids.
So, you're welcome to share comments, but that's a little on the edge. So if you could limit your comments to the procedures.
Okay, Jill's seat is up in June of 2024. Brooke, thank you for stepping in and standing up for these kids. Carlos's seat is up June 2022, and Crystal's seat is up in June in 2023. So anyone out there watching in YouTube land,
Mr. Lappin,
I hope you guys...
is all available on the district's website.
Yeah, and I'm trying to make it public so more people here and are aware of it.
Absolutely.
Is that a problem?
Your tone is actually where
Yeah, I'm very frustrated with what's going on.
Absolutely.
Doctors are coming out and saying masks don't work, yet you're still masking our kids because you're fearful.
So I'm going to ask you to dispense with the raised voice. You're absolutely welcome to share your comments, as is everyone else.
Well, I hope you guys dig deep and think about what's going on. Admit that what's going on is wrong. We're being led astray. That you guys are the ones that are going to have to sleep with this when things change and the truth comes out. And remember that you guys didn't stand up for what's right. Thank you.
It's all about the money, money,
Jimmy Childs from Leeds. I asked questions last time. I was wondering if I was going to be able to get any answers to those. Well, if we asked to get that back on the agenda about taking the masks off at the desk, I see that might be a problem now because the CDC and stuff is saying different things, that it's say masks all the time. So I'm hoping that, because I asked through the chair that that's going to get on the agenda and we can talk about that. I asked about how many kids that got quarantined that weren't sick, maybe if there's a set of numbers or anything. Has anybody looked into that at all? I mean, or is there a different way that I get answers to these questions? Because I've asked through the chair, just like the Robert's Rules of Order says that I'm supposed to do. You know, I see that people can motion to discuss when it comes to a sports thing last time. That was a lot of insight to how some of these boards work, and I like that. So if we could get a chairperson to motion, and maybe somebody to second, and eventually a third and fourth, maybe we could get something done. If not, I'm definitely running for the lead seat. But I just, I don't know how long, I watched the same videos that Josh was gonna play, and them doctors, the one was on CNN, MSNBC, so now you've got all these major news outlets saying how they're just face decoration. So, and the thing is, there's omissions and whatnot. You ask when you sign these papers if there's any omissions or errors. Maybe there weren't 5 months ago when we first talked about this policy, but a lot of stuff's come to light where there's going to be some differences where, just like with Robert Kennedy when he wrote that book about Dr. Fauci, well, you'd think that Dr. Fauci, with the kind of money he's got, he would want to have a lawsuit against Mr. Kennedy for all the stuff he's saying about him. But instead, he goes on the news when he's asked about it, he says, oh, Kennedy's just a quack, he's a wingnut. Well, if somebody's going to write a whole book about somebody and you got Fauci money, you definitely got lawyers. And he ain't doing anything about it, so you know it's going to be true. So when this stuff does come out, like I mentioned time and time again, are you guys going to feel bad? Because, I ain't here to threaten any lawsuits or anything like that. I ain't got that kind of money to have a lawyer. But I have talked to lawyers, and they said our least problem is with the math, is the social emotional learning, which is CRT and all that stuff. And we'll definitely discuss how that got transpired in the school system through these next coming months, and when we're on the campaign trail. But how else can I get some questions answered to a bunch of questions I asked? Is it now? Is it after I raise my hand and we do it like we did for the sports thing last time, where we have a little debate, just like a little debate, a little something. People want to send their kids to school with masks. That's fine, but they're not 100%. The doctors, when we brought my father to the hospital, they even said it. They said the mask is nothing, 1%, they said. So we're causing emotional stress on these kids, maybe not all of them, but even one kid. If they get some type of psychological disorder from this school's going to be held responsible, and the people that sign the paper to that policy and then make it are going to be held responsible. Maine General had 800 employees all vaccinated that all got COVID. It's ideological discrimination is what's going on with one person that's vaccinated can't do this while the other person can. It's like segregation all again. There's a lot of good lawyers all over the place that are working on this stuff, and all we need is one breakthrough in a different state where people's constitutional rights are violated, and we'll be able to run that right down the line, right to MSAD 52. So, I got a lot more to say, but I'd like a few questions answered at some point, please.
I'm not smart enough to make this microphone. Oh, no, wait, I am. Who knew? So your specific questions regarding, is there a date specific that the board would discuss mask requirement or not?
Well,
There was not when you asked that question, and there is not a date specific that the board will be reconsidering the masks at this point. I think we've indicated throughout this process, and as you saw from the Maine DOE and CDC changed requirements this week and expectations that things do continue to evolve, so that's always embedded in our agendas, the numbers of positive students, and certainly, as we have discussed in the past, we will continue those discussions moving forward. But as far as you also asked about data differentiating sick versus positive cases, those are not numbers that we have.
If something as important as this is, wouldn't you be keeping track of every little thing like that? It just seems like, that's the stuff that you be keeping track of, all these little things, but it's just, I see what's going on, and, I respect anybody that wants to do stuff for our district, but, when you got a lot of people that say masks don't work and all experts, in the fields, and I come with folders full, and we just want to believe what they say. If the DOE comes up and says 2 + 2 is no longer 4, it's 5, and you have to teach it, how many teachers in this district are going to teach it? I'm worried maybe I'll just pull my kid out because you got nobody standing up. So please stand up.
My name is Catherine Libby. I am from Greene, and I have 3 kiddos in the district. I did want to start I missed some of the beginning. So first question, were the current COVID numbers and quarantine kids, was that said prior to my walking in? Sorry. Oh, they weren't. Okay, because they're also not being updated on the website, even though we were told that they were going to be. December 16th is missing, and then January 6th, which I understand is today. But if we're not being kept into the loop of this, I also can't even use this information to be able to talk to you guys because I can't reference them. So that would be sweet if we could follow through on that. Secondly, you mentioned, Ms. Brandt, that you had spoken to teachers and staff, and you try to, feel them out and try and, see what's going right and see what could be improved upon. But I've heard from more than one teacher that asking them what they felt about the mask policy was not put into place. You didn't ask them. You don't touch base on from the nurses or the teachers of. I've been told that they were not asked. They were not. So I don't know what that sign was for. And then also, check. So in the newest thing that you just sent out today, it says, I thought I saved it. Essentially, you said that you're following the recommendation and that these are the new procedures if schools are masking, which then brings us back to the fact that it is possible for us to unmask, even though we keep being told as the CDC and DOE that we are listening to, but there must be other procedures. So do we have those procedures of what a school would do if they weren't masking, if it was optional? Is it still the 10-day quarantine? Like, is it still that, or what was the alternative? Because in your message that you just emailed out today, it didn't look as if it was a concrete across the board. And we all know it's not, because there's other states that aren't masking. They're optional, and they have been this entire school year. So what are the options if we chose to optional mask? I think every parent deserves to know what we would be looking at, both sides. Speaking of that, I'm asking for there to be a survey that was sent out. In an email with Ms. Brandt, as she says on 11/9, so November, that there was a survey to how we want the federal money to be spent. Okay, fantastic, that's great, parents had a say. We didn't get a say about masking, so can we please have a survey? I would like to work with somebody, whoever volunteers for this survey to go out. I would hope that even the board could, like Jimmy said, there was a sports thing on the table last meeting and that got voted on that day. So I'm asking you right now, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 people, can we agree that a survey should go out to parents? That's a question.
Motion.
It was a question.
So I got that it was a question. Yes, I understand that you're asking a question, and as has been noted, our process with the board, not during public comment, there are 2 options. There's either an item can be an agenda item, whereas there's...
So was the sports thing on the agenda last time? I'm so sorry, I was just...
Do you use courtesy of not interrupting you if you do the same for me? Items can be added to an agenda if there are discussions prior to the board meeting, because we have legal requirements for how far in advance of the meeting our agendas need to be.
Excuse me, we can't hear you.
Sorry about that. That's what the red light meant, that it wasn't on. Sorry about that. So as far as process, for an item to be on one of our agendas, there needs to have been a conversation prior to the meeting, far enough in advance, so that the superintendent and I, when we develop the agenda, we can add an item to the agenda. That's how the discussion happened that you keep referencing on the sports. The other option is for board members to make a motion of some sort during the course of the meeting. No, so back to the process on public comment. We're not having a discussion during public comment. Folks had the opportunity to speak to the board. Typically, the board does not take action on that particular item during public comment during that meeting, because generally speaking, there's additional information that would be helpful to folks. And so it's okay, you don't have to raise your hand, you're still under your 5 minutes.
Okay, we'll loop back back to that at some point. Okay, again, so that means it's a choice. Again, what would the procedure be if we did allow for mask optional? You mentioned behavior problems. Have you checked in with the kids to see if it could at all be related from having to mask and not seeing their teachers and their peers' faces? Because you mentioned behavior, which could stem from mental and emotional stress, which we've been asking the board about this entire time. Have we talked to the children about, you know, could this be related? Or are we just adamant it's not? Okay. So on the CDC's website, it looks like they post up on a weekly basis. It checks in on Thursday for people that actually do the research on a regular basis. Thank you. There was about over 4 million tests that were done in that time period. 4% were positive. 4%. And this is what we're doing for this. Our entire children, we're just rolling the dice with them. That's awesome. You know, because they don't matter, apparently. Again, the new numbers. I did say about the whole states. Okay, so I do have another question about the whole. So at what point was the sports thing put onto the agenda? I know that Mr. Shaw spoke, and then Mr. West, I don't know how to say his last name, he spoke. Was that, so that was added to the agenda beforehand? Like, is it on those booklets that are out the front?
So the discussion that occurred at our last boarding meeting was a result of, I would say, at least 8 months worth of conversations back and forth, if not longer than that. So
COVID's been going on for almost 2 years, so a little bit longer than 8 months. And is it not, how Jimmy asked, when are we going to talk about the mask again? And you're telling me that in order to have a motion across the board to say, hey, yes, that's so right. We should probably send out a survey to all the parents and figure out what all of the parents are thinking and feeling and what they would like to see happen in the school that their children attend. So how, again, do I get that on the board? We've been talking about masks since the beginning.
And I'll repeat what I indicated previously. There are 2 means of board action occurring, either in the course of some sort of discussion that is as an agenda item, because shockingly, there are often at least 2 sides to any particular discussion item, and we want to make sure that folks of different opinions had the opportunity to weigh in. Or board members may make a motion at some point during the course of the meeting, which is pretty
So
much
when
what
my
you
time is
said.
up, her raising her hand, she could ask that a survey be sent out. I'm not sure why there would be an opposing side.
Public comment is typically not discussion back and forth. Public comment, as I described earlier, is an opportunity for folks to weigh in. If board members at a later time care to take some sort of action, they may certainly do so.
So after public comment.
Okay, so after public, okay, I got it. Okay, I also want to note that I have
So you're well
referenced-
over 5 minutes now.
Okay, I have referenced
So
the
I'd like
survey
you to-
before, just letting you know.
You have-
And emails to Ms. Brown.
Correct. Yep. Thank you.
My name is Garrett Lake. I'm from Green. Can I ask Ms. Branch a couple questions about the new process that just went out?
You may.
Are we still considered the bus and outdoor activities close contact, or is that no longer?
Now, the bus and outdoor activities are not considered close contacts.
Okay. And the second one, if we are considered a contact, can we use an at-home test or a doctor's test acceptable? Because before it was only pool testing was allowed for an acceptable testing.
Right, so a couple things. If the district has the mandatory masking.
Can everybody hear?
No.
Oh, sorry, yeah. So if the district has the mandatory, so there are a series of exemptions to the quarantine. 4 of those relate to the definition of being fully vaccinated. 1 relates to participation in pool testing, and 1 is if there is a mandatory masking policy. So if there is a mandatory masking policy, then students who are close contacts, as long as they don't have symptoms, like they're not getting sick, they can continue to attend school and school activities.
Okay. And then just one comment about the sub. My mother is retired from RSU 9, and I asked her, why don't you come, because I know they're looking for subs, and her exact quote was, are you kidding me? That is so long. So I didn't know if this often takes some of the COVID money and increase it, because that way we can make sure we have all kinds of qualified candidates teaching the kids, just a thought. Thank you.
Can I ask one quick question, just because we were just talking about the at-home tests? Or do you want me to loop back maybe at some point?
Is it to Superintendent Brandt?
Well, so I'm pretty sure this document is the exact one that is on the school website, and it does say Maine CDC does not investigate or accept home-based testing results. There are not counted as cases or outbreaks. Schools may choose to accept home-based testing results. Maine CDC strongly encourages is that schools that do choose to accept home-based test results do so only from those with a valid application, blah, blah, blah. So it says that you can. It's right in the documents that you guys have up on the SAD 52 website.
So what's your question?
So he just asked about the at-home testing, and so far we've always been told, no, there's no other type of testing. It's either pooled testing or vaccinated. So this says you can.
That's a change.
Okay, so wait, you can't accept them? Did I misunderstand that? You can accept other tests?
Kim?
So it's up to the school districts if they accept the home tests.
Okay.
If you don't need a test if you're close contact. You don't. You can come to school because we've got the masking.
Which is an optional. Okay.
My name is Crystal Nicholas from Green. Mom, is today a day that masks work? This is the question posed to me by one of my children. Unmistakably, within this query is not only recognition of official information, in other words, the establishment decides truth for the day, but also within that question is doubt. Is today a day that masks work? Because sometimes they do not. Sometimes, how can masks work some days and not others? It is not logical, of course, best consult the experts. But an 11-year-old with no formal training in discerning propaganda techniques cuts to the heart of the issue. This question predates mask exemptions in our household. Now I live in shame. Every day I hand my son his face shield. I apologize that I am not skilled enough to negotiate the removal of this ridiculous, useless, humiliating medical device, a device acknowledged by his ophthalmologist to likely cause eye strain, headaches, dizziness, etc. Now strangers, celebrity scientists, school boards, superintendents, and unelected alphabet agencies coerce compliance free from pesky requirements as informed consent, licensing for medical products, or health and safety studies. The audacity with which anyone so wholly unconnected to my children attempts to force medical products upon them, which adversely affect their health, this corrupt presumption is matched only by any such individual's moral bankruptcy and utter incompetence. It is difficult to conjure reverence for any such public servants. The injury and harm of masks and shields has been duly noted. Now it is time for public servants to serve the public and stop the harm of the children. Even the children see that there is no substance, only nakedness. Even the child calls out that the emperor has no clothes. Thank you.
Anyone else for public comment? If not, that brings us to the close of public comment. And we move on to old business, of which we don't have any. And there was a question procedurally, what might happen if someone if a board member wanted to make a motion. If you look at our agenda, we have item 9.7, which is other, and we typically ask at that point if any board members have any other items of business they wish to discuss. So when we get to that point, we can certainly move along there. So old business, we do not have any. Brings us to the consent agenda. Do we have a motion for the list?
Second.
I think that was Carlos and Richard. All those in favor? Unanimous. New business, item 9.1, instructional nominations. 9.11, Turner Primary School physical education teacher, Kim.
The Turner Primary School Selection Committee is excited to nominate Mr. Joshua King as a physical education teacher for both Turner Primary and Turner Elementary School. Mr. King brings with him a BS in Health Science with a concentration in PE from Johnson State College, and he has experience as a long-term sub in both a kindergarten classroom and an elementary PE classroom, as well as his recent experience as a long-term middle school PE teacher. Mr. King's references spotlight his enthusiasm for promoting healthy and active lives, his organizational skills, and his knowledge around identifying and modifying motor skills to support instruction.
Do we have a motion?
So moved. Second.
Carlos and Richard. All those in favor? Unanimous. That brings us to item 9.2, approval of various donations to Green Central School.
So moved. Second.
Richard with Carlos for a second. Discussion on this one? Seeing none, all those in favor? Unanimous, and thank you. Item 9.3 is simply to report the completion of the probationary period for the following employees. Brenda Tancrell, district-wide van driver, and that was December 27th, 2021. Heather Turcott, district-wide bus driver, and that was January 4th, 2022. That brings us to 9.4, second reading and adoption of revised policy GBN, family medical leave and new regulations GBN R1 and GBN R2, and deletion of exhibition GBN E.
So moved. Second.
Richard and Carlos. We have discussion on this one. Yuri.
Are these changes mostly just to align with the new laws about leave?
Yes.
Other discussion on this one? Seeing none, all those in favor? Unanimous. Since item 9.5 is a request for an executive session, and I'm sure you folks don't want to spend more of your evening than you absolutely need to, hanging out in the auditorium here, unless there were objections, we could go to item 9.7 other. I got the sense that perhaps there was a board member that wished to make a motion of some sort.
So I have a question. Do we have the new COVID numbers? Do we have the most recent ones for the schools?
Superintendent Brandt did not report out on those this evening.
Okay, so we don't have them available. Okay, my other thing is that can we at least, can we have a discussion? Can we at least get the survey rolling? Can we maybe rediscuss the masks? At this point, I'm a little bit, my nephew ended up getting COVID before Christmas, and he was wearing his mask correctly at school, so. Can we motion to at least either A, discuss the mask tonight, or get the survey out to parents?
Board members can make a motion to any effect that they want, so you could ask either one of those things in the form of the motion if you wanted.
Should we ask both?
You would have to ask them separately, because they're two separate questions.
Can we motion to send a survey to parents, to all parents, and, let all voices be heard?
So you're, now, and enough with the clapping, please. So your survey, you're making a motion,
Yes.
correct? And the motion is,
Survey the parents about their feelings on masks and their effectiveness and how their children are doing with it.
do we have, and so from a process standpoint, if a board member makes a motion, in order for the motion to be a thing to go forward, there needs to be a second, and then a vote in the affirmative. Do we have a second for that motion?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Discussion. Yuri.
Do we know how we would do that survey? Do we do that the same way as the former survey that was mentioned earlier, or do we need to have a discussion on what that looked like, assuming we just wouldn't throw something together?
I think it would be wise to have the superintendent weigh in on what the mechanics of that might be.
So, yeah, so generally when we do surveys, we use Google Forms, and that's always what we use.
Other discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of sending a survey. The motion carries.
Thank you.
So the board will get some details from Superintendent Brandt on how that process would look like.
Can I just ask one quick question? Can I volunteer as for all of the parents again masking? Can I please be the one to talk to Ms. Brandt and make sure that all of the parents' questions are at least maybe heard and maybe put on the survey?
So I think the board relies on the superintendent and the rest of our administrators to perform tasks like that, but we certainly appreciate your offer of help.
Okay, well, I just hope it's very clear. And then, so can you...
So, and as a general rule of thumb, we do ask for people to be recognized by the chair before they begin speaking. And your question is?
Okay, so I do understand that the whole CDC DOE guidelines have recently changed, and obviously in that letter, it was not put on the form what would happen if we decided to go with optional masking. I mentioned that in my speech. So could those options be completely laid out in the survey of saying, if you choose this, this is what will happen. If you choose this, this is what will happen. So parents have a real like, okay, you know, it might be nice to have no masking and we'll deal with these, because we don't even know what those options are because they weren't in that letter to us.
Thank you for sharing that suggestion. Anything else for items that board members wish to consider this evening? Yes.
So, I'm sure I know how this one's going to turn out, but can we motion to try mandatory masks? You know, sending your kids if you want to with a mask, and other ones, you know, who don't necessarily want to mask, not mask, or can we remove them at our desks? I mean, can we discuss that as a board? Because
So, Shaw, I'm not sure I like your microphone here. Sorry to say out loud that it's the operator. So you as a board member have the ability to make a specific motion. So if you have a specific motion in mind, you may do that.
What is the, it's definitely the operator, I can't make this one work any better, it's just me. What's the specific motion you would like to make?
At this point, at least, removing masks at desks. If students wish to do so.
So from a process standpoint, I'm just thinking back, the board had indicated that at this point, we have universal masking in place, so I'm not sure what that would look like as far as that is concerned, but your motion is for allowing removal of masks at desks, is that correct?
Yeah.
Is there a second on that?
I'd second
I'm going to ask again, enough with the clapping, please, it's not a pep rally. So we have a motion and a second on removing masks at desks. Discussion on this one. Richard.
I think that we need some input from other people. I guess I'm talking medical people, and also I'm concerned about how this is going to be monitored in a classroom. If some students aren't wearing masks and some are, I see an issue with behavior and taunting and other things that kids do that are detrimental to their neighbors.
Other discussion on this?
So I guess it's my understanding that, I mean, as a district, we're not going to allow bullying. I'm not sure how that would change, you know, with people wearing masks or not wearing masks. That kind of falls under the, like, no bullying, you know, type thing that we have already. I mean, I can tell you firsthand, my nephews are coming home and saying, oh, well, this kid has figured out that if he's constantly drinking his water, he doesn't have to have his mask on. Or if he goes in the corner and, you know, has class in the corner, he doesn't have to you know, the teacher lets it go, or, you know, it's stuff like that. So it seems to be happening already. That kids are pretty much just fed up. They're not wearing their masks. They're not. I guess at this point it should be student discretion.
Other discussion on this one? So I think this one's a great example of why agendas are constructed prior to the meeting in order to give folks, rather than a vocal minority on one side of an issue, that I'm certain, based on the emails that I received, that there are folks who feel differently about this. And I think it would be unwise for us to make a change in practice without, on kind of a last minute sort of added part to the agenda. So I would certainly not be in favor of this one. Additional discussion on this from board members? Seeing none, all those in favor? Those opposed? And the motion fails. Any other items of business that we need to discuss?
Can I ask a question?
Mr. Childs.
So, I appreciate everything that's going on, you know, showing us a little bit of the inside of what can happen. So, with all due respect, the three of you voted that the kids at the desk can't take their masks off, but you go into any of the administrative offices and their masks are off, and the policy says during school hours, staff and children all times have to have masks. And like I said, I don't think these staff members should have to have their masks off at their desk in their office. I don't believe it. But it says all times, staff and students. So if you're saying that they can't take it off at their desk when they're nowhere near somebody, then staff shouldn't be allowed to either, and that should be forced. So maybe then the staff would say, hey, I can't deal with this either. I shouldn't be above the kids when the policy says me and them. So the three of you says the kids at their desk by themselves has to be masked. That's wrong.
Thank you. So at this point, absent any other items of business, I would entertain a motion for 9.5. And 9.5 is a request for an executive session for discussion of Superintendent of Schools evaluation pursuant to 1 MRSA 405-6D. And we had Richard and Carlos on that one. All those in favor? Unanimous. So we will move to executive session. Thank you, folks, for being here this evening.